After my Altoona trip in 2025, I immediately began thinking of what my next big trip was going to be in 2026, and I had a couple options. The last 2 years, however, I had been seeing revenue service trains and not museum trains. I figured that I should finally go to a faraway museum because I was just feeling like seeing steam. And so I devised a plan. Well, actually, I devised several plans. I had plans to go to Tennessee, Minnesota, back to the IRM, several locations, but eventually I landed on a return to Pennsylvania. This trip I had thought of in 2023 during the Steamtown trip as a potential return to Pennsylvania, and in 2026 I decided I wanted to do it. The plan for this trip was to drive east, go to the East Broadtop Railroad, and then go to the Red and Blue Mountain in Northern. It would be a really fun time to go to the East Broadtop since it's such a nice historically preserved railroad, and then I could even chase Reading 2102 on the excursion. What?
Brother, we have very important business to partake in.
What?
A certain blue engine in a small town in Illinois, and you was the company for it.
Wait, what? No, I don't want to go back to Galesburg. No, I want to go back to Pennsylvania. So, yeah, I didn't get to go back to Pennsylvania. You see, BNSF put number 2042, the Smurf, in storage in Galesburg, which just so happens to be my brother's favorite train of all time. And so he insisted, that we go back to Galesburg for the 2026 trip. I was hesitant at first, but the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. You see, the Smurf was not the only reason to go back to Galesburg. There was also, well, the Dash 9 war bonnets, of course, which worked the trimmer jobs in Galesburg, which I was thinking, I'd gotten enough footage of them in 2024, but, let's just say the shots weren't the best.
Brother,
There was also an opportunity to see BNSF Jeeps. BNSF is planning on retiring all their Jeeps other than the GP60s by 2028, so I figured this would be a good opportunity to see some of those before they get retired. And finally, the B40-8Ws. I had not seen one of these move during the 2024 trip, and I really wanted to. I knew it was insanely unlikely, but possible to see one moving in Galesburg. So I figured that it would be worth going to Galesburg. I guess I'm doing Pennsylvania next year. Since Galesburg had now been decided on as the destination for the trip, and the itinerary was all set, me, my brother, and my aunt set off for the city on June 12th, 2026. The journey there was incredibly annoying. First, we got stopped by a train in LaPorte before we could even leave. NS 267 was blocking Madison Street, and the overpass was under construction, so it took us an eternity to get out of the town. And trust me, this is the longest it's ever taken me to get out of LaPorte. After that, once we got on I-80, the traffic was awful. It was terrible for the entire section through Chicago. It was really bad. We were expecting to get to Galesburg by 5 p.m., but that was not going to happen. We ended up eating at Cracker Barrel in Joliet at 5. Oh, boy. Along the way, we did see a couple interesting things, though, but overall it was a very dull journey. Here we're passing over CN's Homewood Yard. There's literally no engines visible, but it's cool, I guess. Here we're going over a river that I always film every time I go down I-80, but genuinely do not know what river it is. I have pointed this out in like 5 videos by this point, but I don't know. After many dull hours of driving, we arrived in Lacone, Illinois, and stumbled across this memorial with a tank. We had to stop here for gas, and this just so happened to be nearby, so we decided to take pictures. I know nothing about tanks, so Private Panzer, fill me in on this one. And guess what we found in Victoria, Illinois, only about 20 minutes later. If you guessed another tank, you would be correct. I think it's crazy we just found these by accident. The journey was almost over just as the sun was dipping below the horizon. And in typical Galesburg fashion, before we even got in, while we were going through the east suburbs, we were treated with trains. We saw a stopped Bear Table train. We were shocked, thinking, why is this stopped here? And we were even more shocked when we made it to the head end and saw CN C6M in the lead. And only a couple miles up from that train, there was another stopped train, this time with a solo BNSF H2-9. Finally, after a very long and exhausting trip, we finally arrived at the hotel. But because I'm a farmer, you know what I did? Check in, dump my stuff in the room, and then we're straight back outside about 20 minutes later. Me and my aunt decided to head to the Galesburg Amtrak station to get some night shots, since it was supposed to storm the next night and we knew we wouldn't be getting any then. And night shots are cool, especially at Amtrak stations. As we were going into downtown, we had to go under the Welcome to Galesburg Bridge, and we noticed that stopped CN-powered Bear Table train going over it. I assume the two trains were just stopped waiting for clearance through Galesburg, but I'm not sure. I looked on the cam later and didn't see anything blocking their way, so I'm not sure. But eventually, we did arrive at the Galesburg Amtrak station, and as my reaction shows, I was very excited. Discovery Depot. We are back, baby!
At the stop sign, take a slight right.
There's a train. I don't know why there's a
Then at the
train.
next stop sign,
Mulberry
you'll turn
Street, Discovery Depot.
Oh,
Is that the CB&Q steam engine? Yes, it is. Baby, we're back. After that, we parked and excitedly made our way towards the Amtrak station, stopping to take a picture of the Lincoln statue and the station itself on the way. Once we actually made it to the platform, I realized just how creepy it was this late at night. And I was also disappointed because all the signals were red. Since I knew a train wouldn't be coming for a while, I decided to take a look at the preserved CB&Q boxcar that's part of the Galesburg Railroad Museum. But I looked at it for like 5 minutes before a signal immediately turned green for a westbound on track 1. And about 5 minutes later, the bright headlights of a solo Gevo-led oil train came into view. And after the head end passed, the action immediately started picking up, as a manifest exited the yard and rolled towards me. But before it could clear, the DPUs of the oil train had to pass, made up of an Ace and another Gevo. Just as the tail end of the oil train passed and the head end of the manifest was beginning to pass the Amtrak station, an intermodal appeared out of nowhere on track 2 with an Ace leader and 2 Gevos, one of them being Norfolk Southern. Sadly, this meant that the manifest came in behind it, getting blocked. I wasn't too upset though, the contest wasn't anything really special, it was just 2 Gevos sandwiching an Ace. However, as it continued to roll by, we realized it was actually slowing down. Once the intermodal cleared, the head end of the manifest still hadn't left the Amtrak station. And as it throttled up, I walked towards the front, giving me a good view of it departing. After that manifest cleared track 3, we heard the roar of a Dash 9 in the distance and knew that this had to be a trimmer. I was really hoping for a war bonnet because I really wanted a shot of a war bonnet trimmer at night. But it wasn't. It was BNSF 631, a repainted war bonnet, and one of the very few H3 painted trimmer engines that BNSF has. So I guess it's somewhat interesting, but I still wish it was in its original paint. Of course, being a yard movement, the 631 eventually had to reverse back into the yard, so I got another shot of it about 10 minutes later when it was doing that. With the trimmer gone, no green signals, and the fact it was getting super late, we decided to head back to the hotel, stopping to get night photos of CB&Q 3006 on the way. Once we made it back, we all took showers and ate a snack before we headed to bed. The hotel was weird, but it was a good night's sleep, and we were going to need it because next day was going to be the most insane day of the trip. On Saturday, June 13th, 2026, me, my aunt, and my brother all got up early, went downstairs, ate an okay breakfast at the hotel, and then headed to the Amtrak station. And I bet you're wondering, why is the screen black right now? Well, there's two reasons. One, I forgot to record B-roll during this section, and two, the very first train we saw at the Galesburg Amtrak station was, something else. When we got in and parked, we already heard the sound of a train coming out of the yard. I walked over the path, over the tracks, and, well, this happened.
I do not believe my eyes. B40-8W.
Yeah, for some inexplicable reason, BNSF had decided to put one of their local power sets on the trimmer job. A local power set that just so happened to be an ABA set of insanely rare ex-Santa Fe engines. The leader being a war bonnet painted B40-8W with an H1 GP60B behind it and another B40-8W trailing third. I was in literal disbelief. I have no word. Like, what? The chances... This unit isn't even a Galesburg resident. It just happened to be here on this day. What? I genuinely have no words. Since this was a trimmer, it stopped just after passing the crossing. However, it was a local freight power set, so I thought it was a local freight leaving the yard. So I walked up in front of it, anticipating its departure, only for it to reverse back in. I'm telling you, this was just something else. Not only was it awesome because, have you seen this power set? But also, as it was reversing back into the yard, for some reason, it turned the lights on. And so I was able to get these awesome head-on photos of 554. It was really surreal to see this unit in original Santa Fe paint after just seeing 537 restored. It's in so much worse shape. It's so faded you could barely even tell it was ever painted red. After that train passed, the action calmed down just long enough for me to get a good look at CB&Q S4 Hudson number 3006. This very beautiful looking engine was built in 1930 by Baldwin Locomotive Works and served on CB&Q on premier passenger trains and fast freights throughout the 1930s, 40s, 50s, and was eventually retired in 1961. It was donated to the city of Galesburg in 1962 and has been here at the Amtrak station ever since. Behind it are two CB&Q coaches. One is a baggage car, and the other one is just a normal coach. These have yet to be restored, but the funds are being worked up. We also get another view of the CB&Q boxcar with the Way of the Zephyr slogan. We also take a look at the mural across from the tracks on the side of the Discovery Depot. After that, I made my way back to the other side of the tracks, or the non-backlit side, just in time for a 1x1 coal train to scream by with a Gevo leading and an ace as the NDPU. Nice. Shortly following that was Amtrak 381, the westbound Carl Sandburg heading to Quincy, Iowa. If you know anything about Galesburg, you know the only things they care about are Carl Sandburg and trains, so of course there's a fusion of the two. As soon as the Amtrak was out of sight, we heard more roaring coming from the yard, and eventually a manifest started rolling towards us. Power was 3 GeVos, but the last one was a now disappearing NS-ES44DC. After the head end pass, my brother got up from his lawn chair and started frantically tapping on my shoulder. I was very confused until I noticed that there was a heritage hopper, which is pretty cool. And speaking of cool rolling stock, there was this uninterrupted cut of 3 unpatched BN hoppers and this incredibly rare Southern coil shield. Would like to know how many of these are left. And at the end, there was a long cut of very rusty old hoppers. Then we heard the sound of a roaring Dash 9 with a trimmer movement. I was literally crossing my fingers that it would be a war bonnet and not one of the repainted war bonnets. And it was, thankfully. It was ATSF 692, which we would later learn was the only active war bonnet Dash 9 on this day. Now, I have actually seen this engine before, back during the 2024 Galesburg trip, but it was just sitting in one of the side yards and not active. So I'm glad I got to see it running. I knew the trimmer would be back, but I didn't want to get the exact same shot of 692 again. So we decided to walk down to the underpass. The road here has to go underneath the tracks by the Amtrak station because otherwise cars would get blocked for literal hours waiting for trimmers to clear. And so that created a cool underpass, which allowed me to get a unique shot of 692 as it reversed. After the war bonnet cleared, we hiked the short distance back to the Amtrak station and crossed the tracks to the car to grab our picnic lunch. We set up at one of the picnic tables by the Galesburg Amtrak station, but of course, since this is, Galesburg, we got jump scared a million times by trains while we were trying to eat. The first one was another trimmer movement on the other yard track, powered by one of 692's siblings, the 675, which has since been repainted into H2, so it's no longer a war bonnet, sadly. Just like 692, I saw this one in 2024, but it wasn't moving, so it was nice to get a clip of it. On my way back to the picnic table, I snapped a photo of the 2 speeders that are at the Galesburg Railroad Museum, as well as the very bright silver CB&Q caboose. Of course, when I got there, I took 2 bites out of my sandwich before the gates went down again, and I had to run back to the Amtrak station. I'm glad I made it in time, though, because the train was a westbound manifest, with a fake bonnet trailing second. The only one I saw on the whole trip, in fact. I walked back to the picnic table and had to run straight back because the Amtrak Southwest chief showed up with the Pepsi can trailing second as well as a Phase 5 liter. Normally, every time I see an Amtrak Heritage unit, I'm very happy because Amtrak's Heritage units are P42s, which are being replaced. But this was my 3rd time seeing the Pepsi can, and the first time I saw it, it was leading, so I wasn't really too crazy about this one, but it was still nice to see this unit again. And guess what? After the Amtrak cleared, I didn't even have time to get back to the picnic table before a random manifest pulled out of the yard. A BNSF Jevo was leading, and Norfolk Southern ES44DC was trailing 3rd, and in between them was an H2-9. I heard from one of my friends, Central Kansas Rail fan, that the H2-9s and just -9s in general were getting incredibly rare to see on the main line. And I didn't really believe him with how many of them I had seen go by my home line on the Norfolk Southern, but this was the first moving H2-9 I had seen on this whole trip that wasn't a yard job, which was pretty crazy. With this long, slow train rolling by, I finally got time to eat my lunch. And when I got back to the Amtrak station, I was greeted with this! Yep, I managed to see a BNSF SD40-2 in yard trimmer service. For those who don't understand the significance of this, in 2023, BNSF retired all EMDs from the Galesburg trimmers and replaced them with the relocated former ATSF-9s, which we've been seeing doing all the switching up to this point. For some inexplicable reason, though, 1820 managed to slip through the cracks and stay in trimmer service. I had seen a couple pictures and videos of it in trimmer service from late 2025 and January to February 2026, but I did not think it would still be in trimmer service, so it was a very delightful sight to see. Once the 1820 shoved its cut back into the yard, that autorack train I had seen stop next to it throttled up and rolled by. Another Norfolk Southern unit was in the consist, except it was a C6M this time. I also got to watch the train switch over these points onto the close track, which was pretty cool. With all the signals red and no other trains coming, we decided to leave the Amtrak station and head to the bridge. Knox Highway 10 goes directly over Galesburg Yard, and there's a big bridge with large shoulders you can pull off and get plenty of photos. This bridge is directly over the main area of the yard, so you can get a great view of trimmer power as well as engines in the locomotive shops, not to mention the switching action itself. It also allows you to peek into the farther section of the locomotive shops and get photos of engines there if you have a good enough zoom lens, and just see what's hanging around in the yard. On the north side of the bridge is the locomotive shops, which is looking pretty desolate on this day. The only two engines here were a boring Gevo and an ex-Burlington Northern SD60M. However, there was a moving set of light power led by an Ace, which soon rolled under the bridge. They even gave me a horn salute. With that train gone, I used my camcorder zoom lens to take a look at the remaining locos parked in the yard, starting with this ex-Santa Fe Jeep and ex-Burlington Northern Triclops SD60M. Behind them, by the load test area, was a set of mainline power with two Gevos and two H2-9s. Over in the farthest area, we can see a couple power sets, one with a Cascade Green at the end. Right by the entrance of the loco shops, you can see the old H1 Slug. And for the final engines on this side of the yard, we have this hump set, made up of ATSF 644, a -9 war bonnet, BNSF 300, an extremely rare SD40-2B, and the only one ever painted into H4, and BNSF 1450, an ex-Burlington Northern H4 SD60M. On the south side of the bridge, we find the power set with the 2-H and the GP60B we saw this morning, now facing the other way and coupled to an actual local freight. They didn't move, but what was moving was a manifest which rolled past them with an Ace DPU. Then I took a look at the trimmer section of the yard, where all 4 trimmer engines were visible. The closest one to the bridge was of course 1820, which had just finished putting away cars from its last switch move. Behind it was 692, which was just sitting not doing much, and this made me disappointed because that meant I wouldn't be seeing it again for the rest of the day, so no more war bonnet shots. Farther off in the yard was BNSF 2955, the do-whatever-needs-doing engine at Galesburg Yard. It's been stationed here for years, and I actually saw it in the 2024 trip. The last 2 trimmers were of course the 2 repainted engines, 631, which I'm just now noticing only has the black window outline on one side, and 675, which is in the yard preparing for the next pullout. Also, behind all of them, there was this random coal train that was stopped for some reason. With no more stuff to see on the bridge, we headed down to the access road towards the shops. This road is technically a private road, but BNSF does not care one bit if you drive down it. So we decided to, for a couple minutes, just to get footage of some of the good engines by the loco shops. Because they're going to be retired soon, I snapped photos of a couple BNSF Jeeps. And then I got a photo of Santa Fe 673. This thing is really weird, because as you can see it's a war bonnet, but for some reason it has this weird pink patch over the front covering up the Santa Fe logo. I have no idea why it's like this. If anyone knows, tell me. I saw this thing during the 2024 Galesburg trip, but I didn't get any good pictures, so I was hoping to see it again, and, well, I did. However, the real treasure over here was BNSF 3132, the Cascade Green I had spotted from the bridge. Not only is it a whiteface Cascade Green, which is pretty rare, but it's a GP50. As you can probably tell if you look at the long hood, Burlington Northern gave their GP50s a special version of their whiteface scheme. Not only does it have the BN logo on the side, but instead of having a number, it also has the full Burlington Northern text. As far as I know, this is the only unit painted like this left on the BNSF roster. I think there's 1 or 2 still around that have been sold off to leasing companies or short lines, but I'm pretty sure this is the only one still active with BNSF, so I'm incredibly glad that I got to see it. On our way from the shops back to the Amtrak station, we took a detour to go see the Smurf, aka the entire point of this trip.
We are approaching where the deadline is. It's just beyond these trees where I got stung by poison nettle last time. Yep, I can see it! There it is!
No, it's a Smurf!
It's Smurf! The number board's been stolen off of it.
I found it.
It's right there!
As expected, here at the front of the deadline was the locomotive this entire trip was for. BNSF Smurf number 2042. In the late 2000s, BNSF bought 10 ex-EMDX GP38-2s. Because BNSF is lazy and hates repainting things, instead of repainting them, they just slapped some quick patches on them and sent them out into service. Thus, the Smurfs were created. Obviously, they got that name due to the blue and white paint scheme. Over the years, many Smurfs have been repainted or taken out of service, and 2042 here was the last one in service before it was put in storage in early 2025 in Nebraska. Later, it was moved to Galesburg, and it's been sitting here ever since, awaiting an unknown fate. Behind the Smurf was BNSF 2676, an ex-Santa Fe GP39-3. Also, I swear the orange on this unit is a slightly lighter orange than every other H4 I've ever seen. However, the real rarest engine here was BNSF 1659, an ex-ATSF Blue Bonnet GP9U. Yes, I'm serious. This is a GP9. For some reason, this thing is still here. Obviously, as you can see, it's rebuilt, so it's not an original high hood GP9 anymore. But the fact that BNSF is still holding on to this thing is insanity. This thing has been in storage in Galesburg since 2009. It has not run in 17 years. And for some reason, BNSF is still holding on to this thing and hasn't scrapped it or sold it off. Why? No idea. It's also the last GP9 left on a Class 1, I think, which makes it an insanely rare find. If you ever get the chance to come to Galesburg, make sure you make this deadline a priority and get photos of this engine while you can. Who knows how much longer it'll stick around here. Behind that absolute relic was BNSF 2540, another ex-Santa Fe GP39-3. And behind it is this weird thing. Despite what the paint scheme would suggest, this was never actually owned by Santa Fe. It's a GP30 if you couldn't tell by the funny roof, and it was actually built for the Pennsylvania Railroad. Later it was acquired by Penn Central, then Conrail, and eventually ended up on the Nebraska, Kansas, and Colorado Railway, which is a short line. And then it was sold to LTEX, and then for some reason BNSF bought it. And somewhere along that line, it got this bluebonnet reminiscent scheme. I don't know how it got this scheme. I don't know why BNSF bought it. It's just a weird, peculiar thing. If anyone has any more info on this, please tell me. I want to know. Even more GP39-3s were next, with 2592 being ex-Santa Fe and 2717 being the only ex-Burlington Northern one in the deadline. And speaking of Burlington Northern, another incredibly unique engine, this time wearing Cascade Green, was right behind them. This is BNSF 302, an SD40-2B. Now, EMD never made SD40-2Bs. This thing only exists because it got into a wreck during the BN days. It was built in 1973, and after said wreck, instead of being rebuilt into a normal SD40-2, that was deemed too expensive, and so to salvage the locomotive, they converted it into a B unit. It served on the main line for several decades under BN and even BNSF, before eventually being reassigned to Galesburg hump work. It and the two other rebuilt SD40-2Bs, numbers 300 and 301, served the Galesburg hump for many years. In fact, I actually saw 302 still working hump duty in 2024, but since then it's been taken off the job and put here in the deadline. Since it's a B unit, I highly doubt it'll get sold to another railroad, so it'll probably be scrapped sooner rather than later. So just like the 1659 and 2042, get your photos of this thing while you can. Behind the SD40-2B were two more ex-ATSF GP39-3s. The first one being 2650, which has since been repainted into H4, but behind it was BNSF 2839, the first GP39 I'd seen still in its original paint. As you can see, it still wears bluebonnet, which is cool to see. Behind the bluebonnet was a seemingly normal Cascade Green, but oh boy, this thing has an insane history. It's a GP39V, which means it was originally built as a GP35, for of all railroads, Gulf Mobile and Ohio. It was built in 1965, and when it was outshopped, it looked like this! Holy moly, this thing is ancient. It's so old that it was originally wearing trucks from dead Alco FAs that were traded into EMD by GM&O. It is that old. Obviously, it doesn't wear those trucks anymore, as it was heavily rebuilt by VMV of Paducah, Kentucky in the early 90s for Burlington Northern, and repainted into the whiteface scheme. It's still here somehow. It's a lot newer than the GP9, but the fact it's here is still crazy. And there's actually a couple of these GP39Vs still running around on BNSF to this day, so catch them if you ever get the chance. The last units in the deadline that are actually painted BNSF are both former CB&Q engines, funnily enough. 2882 is a GP35M rebuild that was originally built as a GP35, of course, and the 2823 is a straight GP30 originally built for CB&Q as well. Not a rebuild that kept the roof, nope, an original straight GP30, one of very few that was repainted into H4 while it was on BNSF. And the last two engines in the deadline I can see without these reefers blocking them are BNSF 2779, a former Santa Fe bluebonnet GP38-2, and BNSF 1662, the only 6-axle unit in this deadline, which as you can see is a former Burlington Northern SD40-2. Once we finally got back to the Amtrak station, I noticed this manifest reversing into the yard. I figured this has got to be a trimmer, right? Well, I thought that until I looked at the engines and saw there were 3 of them. Then I zoomed in and realized, holy crap, one of them is a PRLX demonstrator SD70AST4. Shortly after I took that footage, it started moving forward. So we got in the car and rushed off to North Pearl Street, where where he found the engines parked. I'm very glad I made the decision to move up like this because they did not reverse back into the yard. Once here, I also discovered that the second unit in the consist was an H1-9, which was a lovely bonus. Funnily enough, the PRLX Banana Scheme, as it's nicknamed, is actually my brother's second favorite locomotive, and he got to see his first favorite and second favorite within the span of like an hour, so he was pretty happy when we saw this. Either way, it was a relatively long wait, about 20 minutes, before the train throttled up and left, giving me a good view of the H1 and the Banana Scheme. Several railroads have been trying out the HT4s recently, most notably CN, which apparently has placed an order for them. I wonder if BNSF will buy some in the future. With the power gone, we made it back to the Amtrak station and got there just in time before the tail end passed. Shortly after it had cleared, another tremor movement showed up, powered by 675. I was expecting this since I had seen 675 preparing to pull out while I was on the bridge. Just like that autorec train earlier, I got a cool shot of it switching tracks on these points here. Then I noticed that this signal was orange, meaning a train was inbound into the yard on the curvy track. I'd only ever seen trimmers and outbounds take this track before, so I was very confused as to what type of train would need to take this line and not one of the other two connections into the yard. I soon found out, however, because as the train approached, we realized that it was a ballast maintenance of way train. The power was nothing special, but it was still cool to see a ballast train. This is the first time I've ever seen one. by now we actually had a goal that we were going to finish the day with, that being the Amtrak California Zephyr, which we knew was close. We decided that would be the final train for the day, but before it could clear, this stacked train had to get out of the way. It had an ace trailing, so I guess it was a little interesting. As we continued to wait for the Amtrak, suddenly 3 engines popped up out of nowhere in the distance. It was the 2-9s and 1 GEVO we had seen coupled to the other GEVO at the loco shops earlier on this day. They were turning them around on the Y so that when they departed, the -9 would not be in the lead because BNSF hates having cool leaders. Then Amtrak finally appeared, led by a very nice P42 DC duo, both in Phase 5, and as you can see, there was a very interesting thing in tow behind them. Once the train stopped, I walked up to the front to get a look at the very unique sight of 2 Metrolink coaches on the front of an Amtrak train. Metrolink is the commuter operator for the greater Los Angeles area, and for some reason these coaches are headed to Chicago. From what I heard, Metrolink is getting new coaches, so they're retiring these, and I think they were sold off, probably to Metra. I guess that's why they're going to Chicago, but I don't know why Metra would need them. I actually don't know why these are here, but it was still cool to see nonetheless. Like most Amtrak stops, it was only brief before the train throttled up and headed out of Galesburg, marking the end of my rail fanning for this day. After that, I went back to the hotel. My aunt and my brother stayed out card shopping while I simply rested. It was really nice to get a good amount of rest in after going to bed at 12:20 a.m. yesterday and rail fanning non-stop since 8 a.m. today. It was really nice to just chill for a while. And I needed this rest because I knew that there would be more stuff coming the next day. June 14th, 2026 would be the last of my 3-day stay in Galesburg. We had to get home by the end of today, and so I could only railfan for a short time in the morning. Thus, I wanted to make the most out of it as I could. So instead of going to the Amtrak station, we headed straight for the bridge. I was hoping that maybe some things in the loco shop had moved, and I could see different engines, but yeah, no, that wasn't the case. The only engine sitting in the close area of the locomotive shops was another GEVO, and the farther area hadn't changed one bit since yesterday. With nothing interesting there, I turned my attention to the switchers. There was some random train going into the yard, and 692 and 1820 were both active with trimmer jobs. Also, way out in the yard, 2955 was pulling 2 BNSF grain hoppers, which was strange. These 3 trains rolling next to each other did give me some cool opportunities for unique shots as they accelerated, decelerated, and rolled by. While I was filming those shots, this set of power rolled into the yard with the 25th anniversary unit leading, and the power set at the head end of that manifest finally moved far enough for me to see what it was. Funnily enough, it was one of the hump sets, so these were probably bringing it over to the hump to get sorted. Since both 1820 and 692 were ahead of the bridge, that meant they wouldn't reverse back, so if I wanted to see them, I had to go to the Amtrak station, which was the plan anyway. However, on the way there, we came across 2955, now shoving those 2 BNSF hoppers, which I now learned were condemned, to somewhere. Not really sure what it was doing. Once we made it to the Amtrak station platform, I saw 1820 approaching with a trimmer movement. I was a little confused since while we were on the bridge, 1820 was reversing and 692 was going forward, so I thought for sure that 692 would be out here first, but nope, 1820 beat it. But now that I think about it, it makes more sense because 1820 was farther ahead in the yard, so yeah. I also got a much better shot of it than I did yesterday, so overall I was very happy with this. As it reversed, I noticed a couple pieces of rare rolling stock, including 2 Mopac hoppers in a row. These hoppers are not very common, so seeing 2 in a row was very exciting. There was also a Ferromex gondola, which I've actually never seen before, so that was pretty unique. And of course, I had to film 1820 reversing back in, with quite the roar. Once 1820 was out of view, 692 appeared, but it stopped to let Amtrak 381, the Carl Sandburg, clear, as if it pulled ahead with the trimmer movement, it would be blocking the line this train had to take. Of course, being Amtrak, it was the exact same engine and coaches from when I saw the Carl Sandburg yesterday, so I was very disappointed. The SC-44s are very ugly. This reminds me, during the 2024 trip, I actually saw this train with a Dash 8 leader. Man, I wish that happened again. As the Amtrak rounded the curve and went out of sight, I noticed that 1820 had actually pulled up next to 692. I was worried I'd have to wait for another 1820 trimmer movement before I'd get to see the war bonnet again, but thankfully 1820 soon reversed back into the yard and 692 started throttling up and going towards me. I realized as it was approaching that the points were set for it to switch onto the close track, meaning that I would get another awesome shot of the train heading directly towards me, and this time it was a war bonnet, which made it all the better. Once it cleared going forwards, I decided to head to the Welcome to Galesburg bridge. I had realized from the incident on Friday that trains actually go over this bridge, meaning that I would get an awesome shot of 692 reversing and going right over the Welcome to Galesburg text. Since this was going to be the last train I saw during this trip, I figured that there would be no better way to end it. And after we got here, it was only a short wait before we heard Dash 9 chugging in the distance, the slack of cars bunching up, and eventually 692 reversed past us, and I got an awesome shot over the bridge. Of course, the sun had to disappear for precisely the time it was going over the center of the bridge, which is just great. And with that, we couldn't afford to spend any more time in Galesburg if we wanted to get home in daylight, so we hit the highway and headed back east. However, we did have one more destination to visit on the way back. It wasn't a train place, but I'm still going to include it in this video because it was really cool. That destination was Starved Rock State Park, which was just off the highway, And my aunt is a literal Indiana master naturalist, so she wanted to go there, and I wanted to go there, and my brother, well, he didn't really want to go there, but 2 out of 3, so we won. When we got there, we immediately hit the trail and started heading our way towards the titular Starved Rock, stopping and taking a little detour on the way to get these pictures of the Illinois River, as well as the Visitor Center. It was actually very nice. My favorite part was this model right here, showing one of the infamous legendary battles at Starved Rock. Here's what the view from the top looks like. Quite impressive. There's also this very nice view of the Illinois River and this dam to help control floodwaters. You can also see Plum Island Eagle Reserve across the river. And with that, we just finished the journey and headed home, with no more stops. I hope you enjoyed this video, as weird as it was. Could you tell this was recorded over 3 different days where I had varying levels of motivation? Yeah. Anyways, enough blabbering, because I feel like I do this at the end of every single video. I hope you enjoyed. Make sure to catch those units while you can, especially the Dash 8 War Bonnets, and I will see you in the next video.